As you are pulled from the dregs of sleep, you become aware of the cold ground and nausea churning in your stomach. Had you gone drinking and passed out on someone's floor? You rise, groaning, blinking open your blurry eyes and focusing your vision. You blink, once, and then again, and then realize that none of your friends had a sex dungeon. Before you were bars, and it soon became clear that you were trapped in a cell of some kind. Across from you lay Eijirou in his own cell, unconscious. You rise quickly, shouting for him. Eijirou? As you stand, you are weighed down by heavy restraints wrapped around your wrists and ankles, a similar cuff to the ones they used for the teachers at UA to handicap them, except these seem to be made of pure, dark rock. Try as you might, these restraints would not come off. E? Wake up, come on. You shout for Eijirou again, starting to panic slightly in this unfamiliar situation. When Eijirou still hadn't moved, you began banging on the bars. Eijirou, I know you're a heavy sleeper, but I can't be here alone. It took a bit more banging for Eijirou to stir, and your breath unleashed with a huff of relief. He groaned. Pebble, can't we call in sick today? His arm moved to reach for you, tapping the ground next to him, before his eyes fully opened with confusion. Pebble? I'm over here, E, you say, sagging with the release of tension, glad to see him awake. He sat upright, holding his head from what was likely dizziness. Where are we? What are these? He shook his hands that had the cemented restraints. I don't know, I just woke up too, you tell him. What's the last thing you remember? Weren't we doing reports? Eijirou asked unsurely, and as he says it, you remember. The both of you were doing last-minute reports while waiting for Katsuki to come back from his night patrol. So how had you ended up here? A voice came from beyond the space between their cells. Finally, you're awake. The both of you sleep like the dead. A woman walked through, phone in hand set to dial. Her hair was a deep green, not unlike Sue's, and extended to nearly sweep the floor. Her eyes were wide and bright violet. Her lips painted with pink lipstick, pursed as she paced their cells, waiting for the person on the other side to pick up, not paying them much heed. Who are you? Eijirou asked, eyes furrowed with puzzlement. How did you take us? You demanded. She waved her hand dismissively. 1 second, all will be explained. Just be patient. The phone was answered, and your eyes widen as you hear the familiar, abrasive tone beyond. Who the fuck is this, and how did you get this number? I swear if Dunspace is still passing out my number, I'm gonna... The woman's nose scrunched in disgust. Real charm at this one, she says, looking between you and Eijirou as though to ask, was this the best you could do? You both share a worried glance, disliking how the situation was playing out. The public did not know about Eijirou, Katsuki, and your relationship, and yet all three of them were involved in this villain's ploy. A person neither you nor Eijirou knew. I retrieved your number from your partner's phone, the woman said bluntly, cutting off Katsuki's rant. Katsuki paused. My partner? What are your names for them? Firework and shitty hair? Ring any bells, Dynamite? She chimed. Touch them and die, bitch. Katsuki seethed through the phone. Would you like to see them? The woman offers graciously. She brings the phone from her ear, switching to video call. Katsuki still in hero gear, specks of dirt and dust along his suit. He stares a flaming line through the phone to their captor, before she twists the phone to face them. You idiots can't break out of that shit, he demanded, but the subtle worried glint in his eyes was prominent to you. You can try, the woman shrugged. You use your quirk on the bars, while Eijirou attempts to use his hardening to cut through them. No luck. The woman sighed, satisfied. I obviously reinforced both cells against your quirks. It wasn't easy to get such materials. What do you want from us? You demand, growing impatient. You are a means to an end, the woman said, turning Katsuki's face back to her. Do I look familiar to you, Dynamite? Her demeanor was calm, but her eyes intense as she waited for his reply. Should you? Katsuki sneered. You killed my brother, she said simply, in Moscow, last year. Katsuki paused. From the glimmer of the screen you could see, you noticed his eyes narrow. Dominic was your brother? He was smuggling drugs, quirk enhancers. He was my brother. The woman cut off forcefully. My baby brother. Someone akin to a child to me. And you took his life. He wasn't supposed to die, Katsuki said, his tone tamer than it had been. But he felt it was more important to save his shipment. He got caught in an explosion Heza was destroying it. I know how he died, Dynamite. I don't need you to explain it to me. I've seen the footage, the woman said, as she began to pace the cells, rambling on thoughtfully. I looked for a sibling first, she admitted. But you don't have any, so you will not feel the exact pain I felt upon hearing of my brother's death. You will not know the pain of raising a child to holding their disfigured corpse in your arms. But this will have to do. Pick one, Dynamite. Which one of your partners should I use for your retribution? You suck in a breath and look to Eijirou, seeing your panic mirrored in his face. This was always a possibility in hero work, to be captured and killed, but you'd never imagined it would be with Eijirou nearby, that either of you would have to watch the other die, being near enough to smell the blood and hear her call for agony, but unable to save them. Don't you dare touch them, Katsuki screamed. Do you hear me? I will find you and explode your fingers one by one. Killing us isn't going to bring your brother back, Eijirou implored, desperately. He was a bad person. He hurt a lot of good people with that drug. I don't care, the woman shrieked, losing her composure and apparently her patience. I care that I took care of him for 20 years, that I went to every parents' meeting. I stayed up helping him painstakingly learn how to spell 4-letter words. He was my brother, and you took him from me. Fucking pick one. Katsuki's anger simmered down, the gravity of the situation sinking in. He pleaded with the villain. Your fight is with me. I killed him. Please, let them go. He spoke with more care and more caution than he'd ever spoken before. Fine, the woman spat. You don't want to pick? I'll pick for you. Katsuki protested as the woman flicked her fiery gaze between Eijirou and you, a death sentence at the tip of her tongue. You could see Eijirou's fear shining in his eyes as he glanced at you, his fear that you would be picked and not him, a fear reflected in your soul. You would not survive watching Eijirou die. In the next second, the woman's eyes set with her decision. I just realized, Red Riot can harden his skin. It would be harder to torture him. Sorry, sweetheart, she said, turning to you. You drew the short straw. Relief and terror clashed together in you. Though you faced the turmoil of your emotions and whatever this woman had in store, at the very least, her sights were no longer set on Eijirou. And by the sounds of it, she did not intend to kill you immediately. You could survive. In contrast to your slight ease, Eijirou's horror amplified. He gripped the bars, banging on the solid structure, and yelled, No! Choose me! Please, I won't use my quirk. Please don't hurt them. Please? The woman pulled out a small remote from her pocket and clicked a button. The restraints on your wrists and ankles yanked you back, slamming you into the wall at the edge of your cell. Tug as you might, the restraints did not flinch at your attempts. Then the woman opened the gate. Her violet irises swirled with malicious intent, while Katsuki and Eijirou shouted for her to stop. "I won't use my quirk," Eijirou continued to scream. "Please, I promise." The woman hesitated, sighing with what seemed like consideration. Faster than a strike of lightning, the woman whipped around. You didn't see the knife that flew from her hand, but heard the thud as it struck Eijirou's hardened skin and bounced off. The woman smiled with fox pity. "Guess you would, huh?" Eijirou stared down at the knife with sorrow and flabbergasted, shaking his head in disbelief. "I didn't..." He looked to you, and you began to reassure him as his eyes filled with tears, knowing it was just instinct. It's okay, it's okay. Try again," he begged. "Try again. I won't harden my skin, please." "What the fuck is happening?" Katsuki yelled through the phone. The woman merely turned her back on his anguish. Her gaze skimmed you lazily. She raised her hand to trail down your cheek, and you jerk away from her touch. Perhaps if my brother had been allowed to live, he may have found a partner as beautiful as yours, Dynamite. She turned the phone camera to herself and vowed, "I will make sure that you don't recognize their corpse." She cut the call and graced you with her full attention. She reached into her jacket, pulling out an obsidian throwing knife. "We're going to have to start with this and see how long you can last. I was so focused on restraining you that I didn't have time to be more creative." She skimmed the knife over the skin of your arm, contemplating. "But we have time." You stared at her, hoping you looked braver than you felt, and refused to fall victim to her goading. Tears streamed down Eijirou's face as he cried for her to stop, to not go through with this. All such pleas fell on deaf ears. You flick your gaze to Eijirou, your heart breaking at his distress. You try to smile reassuringly, but you could feel the waver. "Don't look. It's what she wants, to torture us both. Don't look." You grit your teeth at the first cut, watching the blood pool and drip from your arm. "That's cute," she taunted, excitement flaring at her first look of red. "Don't look like a coward, Red Riot. They're getting tortured as much for Dynamite as they are for you. You couldn't stand to get hurt, so they will in your place." Hear them scream. Then she made her second cut, her third, her fourth, her 100th, her 1,000,000th. Time had distorted to an endless loop of pain, nausea, the centerpiece of sickening violet eyes in a swirling room, and worse, Eijirou's endless pain cries, begging for the torment to end. Eijirou's breath scratched his throat like sandpaper, his countless shouts having left his cords raw. The bars before him mocked his efforts with their stagnancy, as they had not even been scratched by his efforts to break through. Though you'd asked him to look away, he would not dare after what he'd done. He'd all but condemned you to what you were now. Still strung up by your restraints, your body hung motionless. Not an inch of skin was unscathed by blood. The heinous knife in that woman's hand had ensured of that. You had long since succumbed, whether from blood loss or pain, he wasn't sure. But at present, his only concern was watching the slight, almost undetectable shift of your chest as you took breath. The woman stepped back and paused, as though admiring her work, then brought her bloody hands back to your face. She gripped it and jerked it up to examine, smearing blood. "I think I will save your face for when you're awake. It will take Dynamite time to find you anyway. I have nothing but time." She released your head, allowing you to drop down. She took a few steps back and snapped a picture of you. likely to send to Katsuki. Eijirou wondered if the agony that had plagued him for the last few hours, hearing you in pain, would crash onto his partner all at once with just that picture. She turned to Eijirou, who held despair like a shroud around him, and exhaled. I suppose I'll be kind. She clicked a button on her remote, and Eijirou was yanked back towards the wall by his restraints. Exactly how you were before the torture began. She clicked the remote again, and you dropped to the ground, like a lifeless puppet having their strings cut. She grabbed onto your hands and dragged you into her cell, leaving a trail of blood in her wake. Only when she'd slammed his cell shut again did she release him. He scrambled to you, taking you into his arms and calling, though he knew it was in vain. Pebble? Pebble? His hands went instinctively to your pulse, which was stronger than he had expected. Your breathing, however, was fainter than he'd hoped. The woman lifted a tray from an unknown corner in the room and slid it into the cell. Do not tell death I had no mercy, she said simply, before walking away.